Hey guys and girls, Bored Now back with you, and this is going to be another new movie review. On this video I will be reviewing Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This is the new film by French director Céline Sassamar. I'll go with that. It's probably wrong. It's one of those names. I'm not sure whether it's like a silent sort of sound or if it's more literal, a bit harder, like Sakamar or Sasham. I'll go with Sashamar, as I said. So Céline Sashamar and her new movie, and I saw it tonight at my local picture house. It's a special preview because it's not actually out in the UK yet. It was quite a popular film on the awards circuit. It won a couple of big prizes at the Cannes Film Festival last year. It won the Queer Palm Prize at that festival. It also won Best Screenplay, and it was in the running for the top prize, the Grand Jury, which in the end went to Parasite. And it's also been up for like Best Foreign Picture at some of the American awards, like the Golden Globes. Possibly the BAFTAs as well. I'm not too sure. I don't actually know if it was up for the Oscar for Best Foreign Film. I didn't really see, but certainly getting a lot of critical praise and quite a lot of awards attention. So yes, this is a director I've been really impressed with in the past. I've seen. She's done a lot of short films, but she's sort of only done. This is her fourth feature, and I've seen the previous three, and I've been really impressed with all of those. So she did Water Lilies about 10 years ago now, a little more. Very impressive coming of age type drama set in the world of synchronized swimming. She also did Tomboy, and she did Girlhood, and I mean even Girlhood now I think is I think it was around about 2013, 2014, something like that. So she likes to take her time getting these films put together. And again, this is quite a different sort of film from what she normally does. So it's a period drama. It's set in the 19th century or the 18th century, late 18th century in France, and you have this sort of quite middle class, quite well off painter, Marianne, who's played by Naomi Millet. She is hired to paint the portrait of this very sheltered, very reclusive young woman. I'm forgetting how you pronounce it. I'm sorry about that, but she is played by Adele Hownen. I'll go for, who was also in Water Lily. She was in that film, obviously much younger then, but she was great in Water Lilies. So yeah, as I said, her mother hires this painter, this famous painter, Marianne, to paint a portrait, and basically she's had experiences that has changed her. She lost her sister, and she, as I said, she's lived this sheltered life, so she hasn't really experienced any outside world or any like major culture. And the reason her mother wants her to have this portrait done is because she wants to use it for any suitors. So it's this culture of get married young, settle down, and just rely on marrying into money. That kind of attitude, that sort of culture. And the setup is because Helise. I'm going to go with Helise. That's the closest I can probably get because she's nervous and she's not used to like human contact, and also someone else was hired to paint her, and that didn't go very well. Because of this fact, the mother advises Marianne to just pretend that she's there as a companion, so she has to socialize with her during the daytime, and then she has to paint her outside of those interactions, so to speak. So she has to paint her in private without Helise knowing, and slowly they form an attachment. They start connecting on an emotional level, and a romance blossoms starts simmering under the surface as they get to know each other and they support each other. And I mean, one of the big things about the film is that Marianne opens up her eyes to this outside world, this whole new way of living, culture, everything else. She talks to her about other kinds of music than she's been exposed to. So Helise is used to going to church, listening to organ music, for example, and much more cultured is Marianne. So she suggests yes, but there's this operatic type music as well. So she's much more liberal, much more expressive, if you like. And she starts opening her eyes, and they form this attraction to one another. And it's a very slow burning sort of romance. But obviously, this throws up all these complications. And yeah, that's basically the setup of the film, and I absolutely loved this film. I thought it was tremendous. It impressed me just how subtle it was, just how understated it was. You had characters you could believe in. It was a very, very subtle, very delicate like portrayal of this relationship, and you're fully invested in them. There's some fascinating themes in there as well. Great direction. It really engrossed me from the word go. It's a very slow moving film. It doesn't have much of a plot. It is more about the themes and how the characters interact, but that was enough. I think it was beautifully delivered, great drama, and just had these sort of profound and stylish moments. So it really was outstanding. I think it really lived up to some the praise it's been getting. I don't know if I'd say it been overpraised, because I think sometimes an art film like this does get a lot of critical praise, but whether it's been getting the sort of hype than something like Parasite has been getting, or 1917. I don't. It certainly hasn't yet. It's been a bit more subdued than those films. But yeah, I thought it was tremendous. I found it very moving at times as well. So just talking a bit about the characters and the actors. I mean, you get this sense early on of this very like sort of determined, rooted, very focused character of Marianne. She's just got this steely sort of gaze. She's kind of reserved herself, but she does have this like laser light focus, which I really like. You see it in her eyes, and I will be going into some spoilers, so just warning. But yeah, there's an early scene where she's like traveling over on the boat, and it's a really rocky journey, and from that you can just see the sort of framing of the film, and how such a simple shot and such a simple thing as her coming in like rowing over in this boat, it's just a dramatic sort of thing. It's on the waters, so it is showing you kind of the sort of thing that would be thrown up in this sort of the days, and just this sense of a journey for her to get there, just to sort of do this painting. But yeah, it's a very interesting character dynamic, and I think from the moment she gets to the place, it's sort of interesting thinking of this compared to like Water Lilies or Girlhood. I mean, Tomboy was a bit more gritty. It was a bit more like understated, if you like, but those two films, Water Lilies and Girlhoods, they were very kind of hyper real, if you like. They had very expressive, bold sort of colours. Very sort of dreamlike, especially Water Lilies. And this again is the opposite. So this is very muted colours, and it's sort of funny in a way. You might expect a lot of like expressive sort of colours just because of her being an artist, which it does a good job of setting up just how dedicated she is to her craft, and it gets that sort of intimacy and just how I think the film partly celebrates, like art, the importance of art, and what art can mean to people and their lives and their culture. And that's one of the big things about this relationship between Elise and Marianne, because essentially Marianne is opening her mind, her heart, to art and all these endless possibilities. And that gives Elise like a new perspective on life. And that's the most crucial thing. So I think the film is very much celebrating those ideas and how important art is and how important culture is to our culture and to our lives. It really can have a positive effect on people's lives. And there's nothing preachy about that. The film never really gets preachy at all. It just is very subtle, woven into it. It's a very character-driven film anyway. It's very much from the character's perspective, but it impressed me just how understated it was. As I said, when she gets to this place, it's all very low-key. It's all very muted sort of colours, very observational. I think I sort of like the backdrop and the use of sound, but subtle use of sound. So you get the fire sort of crackling in the background when she's first arrives at this place. It's all very dark in shadows, but the fire in itself is like just a metaphor for eroticism and passion and desire, and just this sense of it bubbling under the surface. So we sort of find out really that Marianne has this kind of burning desire, which obviously only grows, when she starts falling for Annalise, and stuff like that. I mean, you get the outside world, you get the like the wind and the storm, and just that's all kind of like a metaphor for passion and desire and the mind sort of running free. There's this beautiful shot quite early on, like a tracking shot, where Marianne is just like walking slowly or quite fast. It starts off slowly and then the pace picks up behind Elise, and it's just this beautifully tight sort of shot. And again, it feels all very naturalistic, like you're following Annalise yourself. But it suddenly speeds up. It's a really effective shot as she's like running, and Marianne is panicking. She's literally gonna jump off this cliff, and she then goes up to the edge and then literally stops and she turns around and sees Marianne and says, "I've always wanted to do that." And Marianne says, "What, run?" And she says, "Yes." So it's this sense of she's been. It's this remarkable idea that how she's never been allowed to do basic things such as that. So the film does a great job of selling these things being restricted, this containment, this this angst and this passion just bubbling away underneath the surface. So it really, a moment like that is really beautiful. It really sells the expression and the freedom she feels just in a simple thing like that. And obviously, it's a very feminist film. I think that's not really saying that much. Not just because it's this very in-depth, delicate female relationship, all female relationship, but I think it's probably also because of the fact that it's mentioned at one point by the mother that a man tried and failed to paint the portrait. And I think that's almost like a feminist sort of like comment. The fact that Marianne, as a woman, has to come and do it. It's sort of her role, and she starts achieving results slowly but surely. But it's all about agency. It's all about the fact that Hannah Lee slowly gets more agency, and it becomes her decision ultimately. She kind of finds out Marianne is actually there to paint her portrait. Like she just stumbles upon it, so without Marianne knowing, and that then becomes this thing where Hannah Leese gets confidence, and she actually wants Marianne to paint it as she's getting closer. And I think there's interesting like contrasts between the characters where, in a way, you've got this case of someone who doesn't have enough freedom in Hannah Leese, but you also have this character Marianne who has too much. Because at one point Hannah Leese is worrying about her future, and she's being pressured to settle down with her husband and have children and stuff. So it's really shown like the restrictions that women have. But on the other end of things, Marianne just isn't worried about the future. She's free, she's liberated. It's the other side of things, but she's also saying, yeah, I'll just like take over my father's business, like buy into that. I think it's her father, but mentioned as someone a relative has like a business. So even though obviously portrait painting and that isn't always seen as the most lucrative, she's not that concerned in the long term. She kind of has no intention, I don't think, of settling down and having a family. She likes being an artist. She likes expressing herself. She likes the freedom, and she's just confident and casual because she partly because she has a like the business to fall back on. And I don't think it's a fault in her, but I think it's this contrast where maybe she has a bit too much freedom, or maybe she just takes things for granted, because over the course of the film, as she gets to know Hannah Leese more and her lifestyle, she does get perspective, because they're from very different sort of class systems and very sort of different ways of life. So she gets perspective. She sees the struggles of someone with Hannah Leese, like in that situation, and also just how commanding and demanding the mother is, and how old-fashioned the mother is, and the way she sees things. Because she gets very uptight about there's various times when the portrait isn't quite ready, and Marion like keeps scrubbing it away and says, it wasn't satisfactory, I've got to do it again. And the mother slowly gets a sense that there's something going on here, and she's obviously trying to pressure her daughter into getting married and stuff like that. So I think over the course of the film, Marianne begins to appreciate how difficult Hannah Lisa's life is, and just I think she gets perspective. I think a good example of that is there's a scene quite late on in the film where the maid, Sophie, her character's name is, I've seen her in something else actually, the actress, but they sort of form like a trio, they start getting close, but she actually becomes pregnant, and it's in the days where if you want an abortion, it's they have to, it's like the sort of dodgy abortion where they have to like dig into you sort of thing, and so it's that sort of deal. And so Sophie has one of those, and it's a really grueling sort of scene, and I think that sort of thing opens like Marion's eyes up, because she has money, her family has money, it's sort of things she probably wouldn't have to worry about. And it's telling in the scene, because Marianne looks away, she's wincing, and Annalise is like, no, watch, sort of thing. And it's almost like saying, you have to face up to these things are reality. And it's actually a really beautiful scene, because you've got these other children around Sophie as it's being done. It's sort of disturbing and beautiful at the same time, the sequence, but I think that's important, that scene, because Marianne has to face this, has to look reality in the face and how the other half lives, so she really gets perspective over the course of the film. So Marianne and Elise have, well, the two actors, as I said, Adele Hounen and Naomi Millette, they have great chemistry. It's like these really awkward like exchanges, pauses, just often it's about what's unsaid, the silence and the gaps in their speech, and just the little subtle awkward looks between them, it just paints the picture vividly. And I think there's this real intimacy. It really is sort of showing you how, when you're painting someone's portrait, you are in effect getting quite intimate with them. They are being exposed to you, and it's almost like in a funny sort of way you're interviewing them, but in a different sort of way. It's visual, and it's this idea of she's getting to know at least the version of Annalise, or what she considers to be Annalise. But then later on, when the tables are turned, Marianne feels uncomfortable, so that's an interesting like role reversal. And they feed off each other, this energy back and forth. They're very playful with each other. It's just a very touching, beautiful relationship, that, because it builds slowly and because there's so much going on, it's just very character driven, very much about the themes. You just invest in it, and it's just this idea of them fighting their urges, and a lot of metaphorical like images and stuff. Marianne sort of burning the portrait, running like the candle over it, which is a very sort of erotic sort of metaphor in itself. I think it's because of that. So the story being so understated, so subtle, so unshowy. The direction is very good. It looks very stylish, but it's also very unshowy. It feels very naturalistic, very organic, and built from the ground up. So I think it is this slow burn, this more subtle light direction, which really makes you buy into the characters and their plight, and they're just fully rounded characters. And the stuff about culture and the class stuff is it's just really meaty, fascinating stuff. But both actresses are very, very good in the film. Great chemistry and a tremendous relationship. I think one of the most progressive in terms of like a lesbian relationship on screen. It's actually it's a complex film, it's an art house film, it's a challenging film, but it's a very beautiful and very charming film as well. It's almost like, obviously, I saw it tonight, Valentine's night, and that's for an alternative Valentine films. I think you can't go wrong. Um, but yeah, really really engrossing. You've got complex characters, as I said, sort of good and negative sides to like both characters. And I like the way it works in the subtle little humour. There are like clever little moments of humour as well that sort of draw you in and gives it that lighter touch. Some of the stuff with the maid is very funny. There's a funny scene with the mother and Marianne, where the mother offers Marianne another job, like a portrait elsewhere with one of her friends. That's if it doesn't work out with Hannah. She says, if you can't do it, I do have another job for you. But the only problem is then she's really ugly, basically, my friend, which is just something very funny about that line. And it got a laugh in the cinema. But there are subtle moments of humour like that. Um, but yes, certain moments and interactions are very playful, like some of the stuff with the trio, because what basically happens about halfway through the film is then the mother gets wind, sort of gets wind of what's going on, but she's also frustrated because Marianne has like torn up this latest draft of the painting, if you like, and she is getting like frantic because time is getting on, and she's like she agrees that to let Marianne do it still, but she's going away, and I can't remember what it was for actually. I think it might have been something to do with arranging the husband. Um, but anyway, she goes away and she says, "I'll be gone for 5 days," and she lays it down. When I return, the portrait will be done, and that's kind of it. So it's this glorious period of the film where these characters just unwind, they just relax, they just feed off each other. Because they invite the maid into, the maid starts helping them out with various things like activities to do with the portrait, but also they just have fun with the maid. There's a scene when they're playing cards, which is just great. They're having a lot of fun there. There's something I couldn't quite understand, this odd sort of scene where that like the maid is just running up and down, and I think that's just to do with she hasn't had that neither. Like how at least she hasn't been exposed to that sort of thing. But then there's something where they're sort of hanging her kind of thing, which looked a bit dodgy, and I wasn't sure if it was some sort of because she collapsed. So I think they were trying to get air to her head or something because she like collapsed on the beach. But whatever, there's some fun scene with the maid, so you get a nice little like this trio of characters. Um, all really good, strong performances, and I really enjoyed Sophie, the character, is the maid as well. Her interaction with them. So they have basically this 5 days of bliss, and it's during this time where the relationship slowly blossoms between Marianne and Annalise. And although you don't get much music in the film, there, as I said, the use of sound is very distinct, and the musical moments you do get are really powerful, really like inspiring, and they're just very unique. So obviously I have to talk about this hypnotic scene in the middle of the film where they're on the beach. I wasn't quite sure what it was, to be honest. It was some sort of ceremony, but they're on the beach and all these women are surrounded, and it's all very religious, and they're chanting. And it's a whole song. It's a beautiful song, actually. They're all singing it, and something about it just makes it very hypnotic, very like operatic. It's a really beautiful song, actually. I might have to try and see if I can get the soundtrack to this film, because the music in it is really good. But it's like this moment of intimacy and realization between Marianne and Annalise. So they're on opposite sides of this beach, or of these people, and they're chanting, and there's a fire as well. And they just stare at each other through the fire. It's like the distance between them, yet they're just brought together by this moment, this random like ceremony on this beach. And it's just kind of beautiful. And then you have Annalise getting distracted by Marianne, and she kind of catches fire, and it's just again this sort of metaphor for the passion, for the romance. And there's the choice of shots, some of the scenes where they're together, it's just great direction, great, like, just framing of the scenes, and you're so caught up in it, you're so wrapped up because you're invested in them. And so there's this brilliant scene where they're on the bed, and like Marianne is doing like a picture of Annalise, but Annalise has like a mirror, and it's kind of where her vagina would be, and Marianne is sort of painting her like that, or drawing her, and it's in the book. It's like in this certain page of a book. And I think it's meant to be a religious book or something like that. But that's just a great little image, because it's playful, it's erotic, but in a way it's not. It's like one of those sort of moments. But there's some great direction, some great choices shot. Just an overhead shot of them on the bed, just opening up to each other, confessing things. And yeah, just the space between them and the way the shot is framed is just so delicate and beautiful. And in the end, now the very end of the film, I don't think it really could be any more profound. It's the final shot, and the way it just lingers is just beautiful. So I'll sort of sum it up. So when Annalise's husband is brought in, that's obviously the end. And I mean, it's that thing of that makes it even more vivid, even more profound. It's devastating because they've had these 5 days together, these special 5 days. And the fact that it is only 5 days, and then they have to say goodbye, essentially, makes it all the more special, because it's a shorter time, and it's such a vivid time. But it also makes it all the more sad because it's being cut short, and they realise they have to go back to their lives in a way, because Marianne has been liberated as well, getting to know Annalise and this new romance, this new friendship. And another thing to say is you do get complicated like arguments and discussions about that between the two. It is a very well crafted relationship, something you can really invest with. They both question each other's like lifestyles, or question their sort of well, is this right, but also is is Marianne right to judge Annalise and expecting her to give up this sort of life? So it does go into these things, and I think tackles them very well. But yeah, basically, their hands are forced a little, unless they decide to run away together, which obviously they don't. Then Annalise feels she has to marry this guy, even though she's in love with Marianne. And that's the tragedy of it, is then they have to separate at this point where they've basically blossomed their romance. And then we sort of get a fast forward to the present, where Marianne is teaching these students, and she's essentially been narrating the film. She's been telling this student about the relationship with Annalise. So now we build to there's actually a great touch when you see the portrait later on, the completed portrait, and Marianne looks at it, and Annalise has like the book in her hand, and she has like the page ajar, which is the page from earlier that Marianne did the picture on. It's the same page, so it's this great like image of the portrait looking back at Marianne and just showing her this this special thing they did together. It's kind of this thing of, it's a portrait, it's all very like restricted, it's all very much in like the prestige, like conservative type image, but at the same time through the image, through the portrait, it gets to share this thing with Marianne, so it's kind of beautiful. But then the final scene where Marianne is saying, oh, Marianne, I did get to see her one more time, is it's at a concert hall, and so that they're in like boxes like upstairs, and so it's at like a performance, like some sort of orchestra or opera type thing. And Marianne says in the voiceover she never saw me, even though Marianne sees her. So they're up in the boxes opposite side, and so the final shot is Marianne, like her gaze almost looking across, looking at Annalise's face, her expression as she's watching the music and being moved by it. And it just stays on her like for so long, and you see her different emotions. You see her getting upset, crying, but also smiling joyfully. And I think the significance of that shot is then it's Marianne, essentially seeing how Annalise has grown and blossomed into a fully fledged woman, how she's now enjoying this lifestyle, this culture, she has her freedom in a way, and I think Marianne played a big part in that, even though Annalise in the end did go the family route and stayed with and got married with the husband. It's still, a lot of it came through Marianne liberating her, and she now gets to experience this music for the first time. So in a way it's a bittersweet ending, because Marianne is watching Annalise with joy. You know, she's watching this fully fledged woman who has now blossomed, and she's happy for her that she's experiencing this culture finally. But at the same time, it's sort of sad because they didn't get to be together, and Marianne has to watch her from a distance, and Annalise doesn't see Marianne, or it doesn't appear, and it's that painful watching her from a distance. So very much a bittersweet ending. I think another thing that you could read from it is then Annalise maybe did see Marianne, or then she's at least thinking of Marianne in that moment. That might be more accurate. So when you see her crying at one point, which does actually seem to be actual crying, as in getting a little upset, not just like happy sort of emotions, not being moved by the music. I think if she was getting upset in that moment, I think you could say it's to do with her like thinking of Marianne and getting upset, missing her, being sad that they couldn't stay together. So I sort of like how ambiguous that final scene is, but it's really, really powerful. I really like how the shot stays on her so long, and we get to see her expression as Marianne is observing her expression as well. Beautifully done, just so explicit and subtle. But brilliant film, really outstanding. I don't think it could have been any better, and I think quite possibly this director's best film so far. Now, when I think about ratings, it's difficult because very often I don't give films like a perfect 10 straight away. I think I have to see them a couple more times, see how they stand up, and obviously it does take a special film to get the perfect 10, but this is pretty damn close. I think it's just about a flawless film, but I will say I wasn't maybe quite in the right frame of mind for it sometimes. I was pretty tired watching, but it's a great film. It's a tremendous film, very unique, and I'll give it a very strong 9 out of 10. I think it is outstanding. It's pretty much a masterpiece, but I have to watch it a couple more times and then maybe I can give it the full 10. We'll see how it goes, but I think it's outstanding. I think it's a really strong film, which I think may well be her best film. And I like her other films a lot too. So 9 out of 10 I'll go with. And this may well end up being my best film of the year. It's certainly going to be up there. It feels like a very unique film. And I will review some of the director's other films on this channel. I'll review Water Lily, certainly her first film, because I've got that on DVD, and maybe the others at some point. But there you have it. That is my review of Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I've gone quite long, so I feel quite fashionably. But if you've seen the film and you have any thoughts, if you have any theories about the final shot, about the ending, thoughts on some of the themes and ideas that play in the film, then let me know in the comments below. Give me your rating, what you thought of it overall, and some of her other films. But yeah, general comments about the film, or any other comments, and like and subscribe if you are new to the channel, and I'll be back with another new movie review soon. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.